Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on, good question, January 16th, 2026, at approximately 8 p.m. PST. Yeah, I did it again. Let's kill that. I left the speaker running on the video that I watch on my copy of the stream. Anyway, enough of the sidetracking. I build myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the exact same tools I personally use in my day to day life. And the philosophies of life I talk about are the same philosophies I guide virtually every decision I make by. With this in mind, I know these tools will work for you because they continue to work for me and have literally worked for thousands of other people with varying degrees of success. Now, before we get into things, I do want to tip my hat to Storm because Storm is the primary moderator that sits in the background. He makes sure tech keeps running, and rest assured, with me, that can be a challenge. Okay. Now, he is also there to make sure problem children are out of the room before they become actual problems. But rest assured, if you are a problem child and you find yourself outside, remember one little detail. Okay. And that is, as long as you behave yourself, you'll be welcome back in. At some point, if you repeat the procedure, you'll find yourself banned. Not my doing, aside from I asked Storm and LA to do that, as well as the other moderators. Now, we also have LA, well, Kira Ava is in the house. She is another one of the moderators, as is LA Moon. And the reality behind it all is that they are here to make absolutely certain that this is a safe place for virtually everybody. Now, we have right at the get-go, we've got Mike Jones in with the gold. How you doing, Mike? Glad you could join us. And then we have Joe Monica is in. Joe, how you doing? And Joe is in with the silver, followed immediately thereafter by Operation Shutdown with the bronze. And I know things are busy around you. And then we carry on down, and that might well be where it ends at this point. But that's not bad. We're in the house for 3 minutes. We got 5 people through the door. Now, today we are looking at Frontier Fridays. We're looking at the Udena world, and the Udena Homeworld. Now, to be clear, there you go, Joe. Congratulations. Joe's just piped up. He goes, "It's my first medal." See, everybody can make it in and can get a medal, but everybody has to get them one at a time. It is not a case of, oh, everybody showed up, y'all get gold. God, wouldn't that be nice? Show up in a chat room and you get handed gold. But the Udena Homeworld, just to put that in perspective, if you've ever watched the movie Arrival, okay, very tall individuals, they're cephalopods, okay, seven-limbed individuals. Now, these guys, that is what your Udena looks like. Okay, now the Udena Homeworld is literally waterbound. Almost 80% of that world is underwater. So the one thing they had to do with the Udena, with the movie Arrival, when they showed you how they write, they showed it in 2 dimensions. This is incorrect. Okay, they write in a 3-dimensional bubble. They just couldn't show it on video. Why? Don't know. Not really overly concerned with the why. Okay, but the Udena are a very advanced race. Okay, they look, in all fairness, they look very similar to Terran squids. But Terran squids have 8 tentacles plus 2 with paddles. The Udena only have 7 altogether, which means 5 plus 2 legs. Okay, like plus 2 paddles, because the Udena can, when they choose to, they can literally walk on land. Now I'm just looking through here, make sure I don't miss something. And again, guys, if you do have a question, absolutely put it in the chat room in all caps. Now, the Udena is in Races of the World. And that's this funny little book here, if I can get it without falling off the chair. This one. This neat little book. The Udena is in this one. The second edition will come complete with pictures and a whole pile more information. Now, the Udena are the race that governs or protects that planet. Now, understand, the one thing we got to remember with the Udena Homeworld, it is underwater. Okay, most of it, like I said, a good 80% of the surface is covered in water, which works out well considering the Udena are water breathers. But they are not the only things there. And as you can well imagine, when you're looking at that kind of world, oh, what are we looking at here? I'm betting what we're looking at. Ouch. When you look at that world, the Udena are a peaceable race on the whole, although they can be extremely violent. Okay, the thing you got to remember with them is their homeworld is very murky, which means they do. There you go. That is a very basic picture of the Udena. Thank you very much for that, Storm. As you can see, kind of a big critter. Well, you can't tell they're big there, but if you take a look at the movie Arrival, you'll see the size of these things. Those paddles you see at the bottom of the two limbs, those are about the size of a human. So you can picture what would happen. Now these guys rule the waters. There are other critters there, other species. And this one you won't see in the first edition, but there is another species called the Udera. You on Earth here know them as octopus. Okay. And again, they are, in their case, they are 8-legged, but they don't have the walking paddles. They walk on all 8 legs, kind of like a spider does. But when you look at the water world, there is so much. Operation is asking, if they can walk on land, does that mean they need a special breathing apparatus to do so? No, they don't. What they do is they hold their breath, much like a whale does. They hold their breath inside that heavy cephalopodic head. They fill that with air. It basically boils down to a bladder, which enables them to operate on land for an extended period of time, which is a good thing because their starships are built on land. They're built, the components are built underwater, but they build the starship itself on land. Kitty Cat, how you doing? You are in with honorable mention. They build the components underwater, okay, and then bring them on land in order to let them dry out before they assemble them. Something to do with the fact you don't mix fuel with water. It doesn't work out all that well. Here we go. Joe's going, you might have said this, but can they color change like terrestrial ones? The Udena do not change color aside from a band around the base of their head. And that is a communication device, much along the same lines as Trezosians, although different species altogether. Heck, they're a different genome. They will, however, one of the things that does change color for them, and it's more the luminosity of it, is their eyes, which can be used to devastating effect and in order to scare off other complications or prove to each other that they are capable of some pretty deadly action. The world itself, understand, when you go underwater in the Udena homeworld, many of the plants are volatile. Okay, as in they will literally tear you apart because they're carnivorous.
We have a question, it looks like.
Oh, what we got? Yeah, the color one?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just covered that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, no, Carrie here was just making sure I got Joe's question. The reality is they do not use technology underwater at all, aside from the manufacturing plants. Neat part about it is one of the deciding factors where it comes to their technology is they work with magma. Okay, mankind works with fire. The Udena work with magma. And I'll tell you, magma is a whole lot more dangerous. Of course, in all fairness, they figured out a way to contain the magma to utilize it as a fuel for the ships. So, when you take a look at World War II with the kamikaze pilots, a kamikaze pilot on Earth in World War II would run into a ship, right? And there'd be a little bit of an explosion. With the Udena, if they end up having to target a ship like that in a ship-to-ship battle, you run into a ship, they've got a magma core, meaning never mind it blowing up. You've now got molten rock, which, by the way, armor doesn't work against very well. When you take a look at it, some of the critters that are in the Udena water world are downright dangerous. As in, when you start looking at some of the Corydon on the Udena homeworld, Corydon, remember, are an earth elemental. They are on virtually every planet. Okay, but they require sustenance. So they will attack anything available. But it's not constant war there by any means, because they don't require that much food. But when you take a look at it, okay, the Udena homeworld, with that amount of water, okay, and just to make matters worse, okay, they also have 3 moons. And yes, moons affect tidal flow. Okay. Well, Sherry, how we doing? Glad you could join us. The neat thing with the Udenans is they've got 3 moons, which means your tidal maneuvers, or more to the point, the surface water is absolutely horrendously choppy. Okay, we are not talking about just mild waves. We are talking about ongoing tsunamis. Needless to say, the areas of the land of the world that are above water are kind of along the same idea as a mesa. But what they do before they start building a manufacturing plant on top of it, or more to the point, an assembly plant, they end up armoring the mesa, because the water would tear the mesa apart if you don't armor it. Okay, now there are such neat little things, and I'm going to be, when we go into the book Meet the Udena, I will cover some of the animal life there, not the least of which are what amount to barnacles. But I've got all that information. I'm still going through it all. Okay. You're looking at a world where most of it like most of the plant life, is carnivorous. That which is not runs on a very solid issue of, runs in on a very solid issue of photosynthetic hyperactivity. And here we are. Oh, look at that. The nice, and I mentioned this, and this is going completely sideways, guys. But let's give a hand to Kira. She is a flutist anyway, but she's got an audition tomorrow to get a gig in a restaurant. And I'll get hit for that later. No. Oh, you're gonna do it now. Yes. Operation the Udena are part of the consortium. And therefore, you can safely say they're not going to come here and attack anybody. Okay. The idea of them handing technology over or trading technology would be great, except humans don't operate underwater well. But they have, humans have come to the conclusion that what you call an octopus, there's no record of anything that matches that description in history, which makes sense. They're Udena. Okay, and like I said, I've got those in volume 2. I was looking through it the other day. If I stick to 60 races a volume, we're looking at some pretty extensive books. And with that in mind, the other thing with the Homeworld, on top of the water side, the depth of the water, because you're looking at miles, and I mean a lot deeper. Well, the Udena Homeworld is about double the size of Earth. Okay, so you're looking at, 12, anywhere from 12 to 20 miles deep of water. And this is one of the reasons why the Udena have a pliable body. Okay, they literally, because what it is they do not suffer from the pressure depth. The other thing you'll find is they pull the oxygen straight out of the water. Okay, and with the amount of plant life down there, they can pull an awful pile of oxygen out. They are oxygen breathers, by the way, or a variation on it. Clearly, it's not the same mix as what we've got on Earth. But when you take an Udena and you fill all of the oxygen bladders, if you compare, the easiest way to look at the Udena is the underside of their tentacles have those little suction cups that you see on squids and octopi on Earth. Okay, but each one of those is an air bladder. So if they decide, now there's an old they call it a mythological critter. Okay, the Kraken, which are oversized on Earth. They're thought of as oversized squids. Kraken are your grandfathers of the Udena. Okay, and I mean you're looking at an animal, at a critter that can literally be the size of a small island. And yes, very much these guys are looked at. When you get them that size, they are not part of the ruling class. Those are the ones that you would basically look at and go, there's the barbarians of your society. They get that size and fine motor work is no longer functionally possible. Okay, neat part about it is the Udena themselves, you know what a barnacle is. Okay, well, when the Udena are born, they start off looking like a barnacle. Okay, then as they get a little older. Oh, absolutely, Sherry. Thanks so much for dropping in. Oh, here we are. And we have Auntie Dusty. How you doing? Glad you could join us. And, I mean, I see what you've written, and that's fine. As long as you treat the people in here decently and stay on track, we don't have a problem. Okay? The reality is, one of the reasons I get to talk to these different races is because of the fact that I look at them all the same. But on the Udena Homeworld, you are talking about a planet where what we have as sandstorms on Earth, they have as sandstorms underwater. Okay, so you get a landslide underwater going into a fissure, and you can have some pretty serious problems. Oh, by the way, you don't want to go swimming near certain fissures because they do have neat little critters down there that are, it's not a question of them being bigger than everybody. It's a question of them coming out in swarms. Okay, picture what happens if a buzzsaw comes out and shreds what's ever there to feed what's in the bottom of the ravine. Okay, this is the kind of area you're looking at. And yes, this is why you are dealing with certain animals there, or certain species. And there's a number of them that I know of. I won't be dealing with all of them, obviously. The Udena are the members of the consortium. The Udera are not, nor are the other species that are on that planet. And one of the things that I have come to understand with these people is, as long as you treat them, as long as you deal with them as individuals, you don't have a problem. You got to remember, at their size, if you're not careful, underwater, you don't have a problem to speak of. Aside from the fact that humans can't breathe underwater well. The elephant figured that out. When we take a look at it, the Udena Homeworld, they do all the manufacturing underwater, and then they assemble their ships on the top of mesas. Okay, now somebody up there is going, well, are there any bridges between the mesas? You got to remember, Udena is waterborne, so the short answer is no. Yes, some species have grown up and adapted to surface life, but they are either locked on that particular mesa, or they figured out how to fly. Okay, and yes, you don't want to see some of the birds that are flying there, because much like the Udena, okay, and it's kind of comical when you look at it. The Udena are cephalopods. Okay, some of the birds they have multi limbs, and I'm teaching myself how to draw, because I'll tell you, some of what I've seen, I would love to be able to put it on paper, but this is where I've got to get back in touch with Chris, my artist for Races of the World. The other thing about the Homeworld is, with the 3 moons. Now, here's the nice part. Yes, they've got 3 moons, but the 3 moons are inhabited. Okay, so what you've got is, from the Homeworld, they do all their manufacturing of the component parts, put them together on the mesas. And then from the mesas, they get launched. The smaller parts get shipped to the 3 moons. And no, the moons are not in geosynchronous orbit. Looking very similar when you take a look at the orbital path of the Udena world. The moons look very much like the electrons on a lithium atom. Yeah, yeah, on a lithium atom, where they're all going in their own orbits, and amazingly enough, not colliding. Okay, it's one of these things you can pit in. It was the Udena Homeworld that I first saw an interesting periodic table of elements with 250 elements on it. Now, sorry, I can't even begin to explain that one. I can't begin to explain the periodic table we've got. The one we've got only has 118. Now, to put that in perspective, when I was going to school, there were only 115 elements on our periodic table. So 50 years and 3. Okay, you're looking at literally thousands of years down the road, I do believe. You look at 50 years to get 3. Let me just see here. We take 250. I'm just doing a real quick calculation here. So we go 250 minus 118. That was wrong. 250 minus 118 is 130. So we're looking at about 500 years down the road, maybe a little more. Okay, in the way of technological advancement. Now, the Udena Homeworld is primarily wild. Okay, on the mesas, whole lot more civilized, whole lot more, shall we say, agreeable, because on that small of an area, you have to take into consideration those species have to get along, or everybody dies. Okay, now, Boondock, how you doing? Glad you could join us. And did I miss anybody here? Not by the look of it. If I did, my apologies. Yeah, looks like I did not.
Nope, you're good. You haven't missed anything.
I am doing my best, to keep an eye on things. I do have a request for you guys though. If you think of something that you would like to know, because I'm working on these books all simultaneously to make sure that things come out. Now, the neat part there is I've got the priorities organized, but if there are questions that you would like information on, absolutely let me know. Okay, and I will do my best to include it in the booklets as they come out. As a matter of fact, I've got a new one coming out. I just have to actually phone this week and get it printed. Because believe in your success and follow your dreams, I just got handed the cover to it. It's been completed. They've already got the book. Boondock goes, I'm functionally late as usual. Well, as the saying goes, Boondock, better late than never. That can apply to a lot of different things. One of the nice parts about the Udena Homeworld, if you like swimming, it's a good thing. The water there is beautiful. It does get rather on the cold side below the water. Okay, down the deeper you get. But here's the neat little part. It doesn't actually get cold. Because on the Udena Homeworld is heated from both the sun and the magma core. Okay, so you're dealing with water that is constantly being heated, not to the point of volcanic heat. Okay, but at least warm enough that you won't actually die, that people don't actually die. Well, that is true, Kira. Kira's just added here, better functionally late than unfashionably early, I think. In my case, I don't track time well, so I just kind of show up when I'm supposed to, or at least when I think I'm supposed to. the nice part about the Udena Homeworld is they are very open to company. Okay, because the reality is this: you show up, you treat them decently, they'll communicate with you as best they can. Okay, you start being a problem, they'll drown you. They don't have a real big problem with it. There's no prejudice. They just drown everybody that causes a problem. And by the way, you'll be happy to know the Udenans have a very simple outlook. How much wealth you've got, what political party you work with, or who you worship is irrelevant. You still drown the same way. And when they can't drown you, they take you down to something that'll eat you. And they have come to embody one other little detail, and this is literally something all of the denizens of that planet have figured out. Okay, they don't even have a word for can't. Okay, it just doesn't exist, or any similarity thereof. They will do what they feel they've got to do. And the idea we can't do that, it's like we're working on it. They have not figured out yet. Well, that's not 100% correct. I was going to say they haven't figured out yet how to walk on land. But some time ago, one of their, if you will, rocketeer scientists figured out how to make an armored suit that is literally designed for Udenans. Now, this means you're looking at a cenopod with heavy boots and 5 other limbs capable of utilizing weaponry. And rest assured, they are not poor aims. The other thing you got to remember with them is they are very peaceful on the whole until you push the wrong button. And then you don't usually live long enough to actually understand that. Operation, the short answer is yes. Operation asked, have the Udena visited Earth? There are Udenans here. Okay, exactly where they are, I can tell you that there are some in the very furthest depths, the very deepest recesses of Earth. Okay, that's where they live, that's where they're comfortable. And besides that, there's a whole lot less problems with people if you're, 5 miles under the water. For some weird reason, humans don't go there very much. Where are we going here? One of the neat things about their homeworld is, somebody asked earlier if the Udena change color, and the Udena don't, but the water and the algae in the water does. Meaning, when you look in the water, it can look like an oil kaleidoscope on Earth. More so in the Marianas Trench and trenches like that. But there won't be an Udena ever inside inner Earth. Bear in mind, you're thinking in terms of Hollow Earth. And yes, in Hollow Earth, you will see them once in a while. Okay, but you won't see them in inner Earth, because inner Earth is the home of the elementals. That's where the Halleck, the Wailosh, and the Cordon live, thrive. Okay, and there are a few others that fit down there, but the Udena do not handle that kind of temperature. They will certainly curl up in an underground pool in Hollow Earth because of the fact it is heated. Because you got to remember, Hollow Earth itself is heated by magma, as well as the circulatory air that's heated from above. It's an interesting setup when you start looking at the actual cellular configuration of a corridor of the Gaboran. By the way, for those of you that don't recognize that name, that is the name of the planet that we're living on, or more to the point, the name of the species. You know, and I know some of you are just listening in. It's like, where are all these racial names coming from? You know, the sad part is I question that myself. But every now and again, I'll talk to somebody and I'll be describing what I'm looking at. They go, I've seen that race before. And I'm going like, okay, so maybe I'm not 100% nuts. Although I wouldn't put it past me to be 90%. This is why I say I am not the only person that deals with this stuff. But I happen to know the ones that I know by a different name than many people. So I look at the racial qualities. With the Udena, understand the Udena, much like the squids and the octopi on Earth, can take an armored hull, even if it happens to be made out of stone, and tear it open. But then you're talking about a slow process with a staggering amount of pressure. You know, one of the other things that you'll find is they launch their ships from one of the 3 moons. You know, but the moons themselves are another issue altogether. I'm just looking at the home world. Okay, the home world, like I said, is about double the size of Earth, and it's about 90% underwater. Okay, and yes, humans could actually breathe the air there, and for that matter, they could handle the water. It's a very similar configuration. What humans won't handle well is the predatory fish. You know, because I hate to tell you this, but humans can deal with sharks. You know, some humans can. They don't deal with piranha well. But picture piranha the size of sharks. Okay, the other thing you'll find is that you're looking at a world that in the mid-run, on the surface, you got a lot of tension. Okay, in the water, between the surface of the water and the last half mile, is quite often chaos, but it calms down as you go deeper. And then once you get to the bottom end where the pressure is high and the temperature really good, that's where civilization sits. Now, I will tell you, and I cannot tell you where the Udena homeworld is. From an astronomical standpoint, I haven't got a clue. Now, what am I looking at here? Just scrolling down to make sure I didn't miss something. And no, not by the look of it.
No, you're good.
You know, the nice part about it, when we take a look at the world, at their world, is the fact that it is a world that is open to communication. However, you got to remember, the reason there is that there are challenges is, number one, getting to them, and number two, when you get there, you've got to make landfall, because humans will not work well sitting on the water. Especially when you think that there is life that is literally invisible on the water, but it coats a lot. It travels across the surface. So you know, when we're on Earth and you look at the water surface, on occasion, because of oil spills, we see a neat little sheen. On the Udena homeworld, you're not looking at an oil sheen. You're looking at an animal, or more to the point, a colony of multi-hued carnivorous, vegetation. It doesn't just, now, I guess technically it'd be called omnivorous, because they do work with photosynthetic transformation, but they are also bloodsuckers. And you can see how well that's going to work. Okay, the other thing you got to remember is the Udena are a heck of a sight. Well, that whole cranial bubble is lined with it is lined with nerve endings and neurons. That is the brain is not a solid mass. Okay, humans have this solid cluster surrounded by a shell. The Udenans, their brain, and this is the same across the planet. Okay, when you're looking at the entire nervous system, it is handled on the inside of the surface organ. Okay, humans call it skin. Okay, the Udena do not have a solid skull, which means you can pull them through and not hold backwards, assuming, of course, they don't grab hold. At which point you're pretty much hooped. But that it is because of that fluid nerve center that you never have an Udena that is mentally handicapped. Okay, yes, you'll end up with them periodically physically handicapped, because the reality is, much as they do regenerate limbs, and everything on that planet does, they can be removed. Jeff, how we doing? Glad you could join us. But the neat part is, when you take a look at different planets, understand there are certain things, because of evolution, that take place. On the Udena Homeworld, their entire nervous system is on the inside of their surface skin. Okay, so you don't end up with a system that gets with a mind that gets damaged. Okay, you end up with a mind that may think a little differently, but they already, the moment they get a part of their brain bruised, it automatically rewrites around itself, holding memory solid. And when you start taking a look, now remember I mentioned the multi-hued algae on the surface. These guys communicate one to the next, and it's literally instantaneous. The only species I know of that did that earlier, okay, that did that other than this one, was the Mobians, who evolved here on Earth. Okay, but the nice part about it is, on the Udena Homeworld, they have constant contact, and when they do connect, it travels without even blinking from one side of the world to the next. When I say that their nervous system is completely intertwined with their planet, I'm not kidding. This is why an assault is a really bad idea. They developed a neat little response, and it was in tandem with the planet. Okay, they call, if somebody gets attacked on, let's say, the North Pole, the people on the South Pole know about it just like that. And you can bet the first thing they're going to do, because they roll with it, the first thing they're going to do is trigger a tsunami from the southern pole to go all the way around the planet and hit the impact point, hit the assault point with waves from all four sides. Okay, now picture what would happen if that kind of knowledge were turned to external warfare. Okay, if you saw the show Starship Troopers, okay, you saw insects that could do that. Picture what would happen if that entire planet did. Boondock. The short answer to that, Boondock's just asking, do they have the ability to shapeshift or mimic whatever they choose? The answer there is no. Okay, the only species I know of that can do that is the Korlock. Okay, the Udena, they have to hold the cenopod form. Okay, but they do have the capacity to construct some pretty phenomenal combat-oriented things. Understand their combat weaponry development was pretty much stalled when they finally attained peace because they have a unified planet. Okay, and I do mean it's a unified planet, not just the species. They take care of their animals as well as they take care of their people, and for that matter, the planet itself. So they stopped developing extreme weaponry when they attained peace. But what they consider extreme, what they consider peaceful weaponry, would wipe out Earth overnight. This is why you gotta realize these guys are not combat oriented. But picture what happens if you feel, now, like I said, go back to the movie Arrival and look at the size of their ship. Now, what do you think happens if you would send over on one of those ships and send it over as a drone? One algae colony, okay, that is capable of spreading out at a staggering level. Okay, what's going to happen if you drop one of those into a city? All of a sudden, you got nowhere to run and no way to stop it because you either kill the whole thing at once or you don't kill it. Now, napalm would technically work if they weren't as wet as they are, so you're going to have to look at thermite. And my guess is that people are not going to think that clearly when that happens. But the Udena they don't have ships that they travel the ocean in because they don't require them. Okay, the young ones when they are getting used to working on the surface in the air, the older ones will literally fill their bladders to form a small island for the young Udena to actually learn to walk on. Okay, but you are looking at a species and a planet where 90% of the species are, if you will, soft and squishy. Okay, they are not mimics, but they are certainly capable of creating havoc. Now, where am I sitting here?
You're still good. You haven't missed anything. I have a quick question.
Sure, fire.
So, if they are, so the Udena are very intertwined, you said, with their planet. So, how is it that there have been Udena who have come to Hollow Earth without causing themselves problems because of the distance that they have from the planet they're so closely connected to?
Because they are independent organisms. They are not a colony species. You know, they are literally independent. They just happen to have a communication method that links everything together.
Okay.
You know, but there are those that come to different planets. Those are your scientists that are going, but what's the rest of the world like? Or what is it like to not have that kind of connection?
Right. Okay. Cool.
Ultimately, Boondock, the short answer would be yes. If they were to try and take out the planet, we're trying to take over the planet. Now, remember, there's that other little safeguard. You know, Boondock is literally asked, so to destroy one of these colony algae, to destroy one of them, we would essentially have to wipe out ourselves. And the short answer is yeah, because you would have to take that much area and wipe it out all at once, or it will regenerate. Okay. And the speed of regeneration literally depends on how much biomatter it can consume. And on Earth, there's a fair chunk of it. You know, the good news is that if even one of them were to try and do that, then what would end up happening is the consortium would drop in because the Udena are part of the consortium. The consortium would mobilize and wipe out their primary, secondary, and in their case, they only have the one planet. Okay, they've only got the one planet itself, but they've got their secondary and tertiary governments on the moons. So the consortium would go in and wipe out that entire system to make sure that they took care of it. And then they come down and they would wipe out what was left of the Udena. In a case like that, they'd come to Earth and wipe out the Udena that was there. Okay. And yeah, there would be a staggering amount of collateral damage for humans. But the consortium has a weapon that can do it without killing everybody on the planet. Granted, you may have a city that gets wiped out completely. And no, the consortium is not likely to turn around and apologize for wiping out a single city. Or for that matter, a half a dozen of them.
9 minutes.
Ah, perfect. Now, we are getting down to the end, so let me just call up something here because I want to make certain I don't put my foot all the way in my mouth. Okay, we are on the 16th right now. So tomorrow, which is Saturday the 17th, we will be dealing with humans according to the consortium. What do the consortium see humans as? Then on Sunday, we're going to take a look at language, its impact on mental health. Monday, we're going to look at finances again, rent or lease to own, and 0% financing, the pros and cons. Now remember, I am not a financial guru. I made way more than my fair share of mistakes, but this is information I've learned that I work with on my own world, in my own life. And then, of course, as per request, I forget who asked, on Tuesday the 20th, we are going to take a look at how to cope with narcissists. Okay? And I do mean how to cope with them, not how to cure them. Because I don't know if there is a cure. Well, there is, but we're not going to get into that. Now, let's get back to where we were. There we are. Thank you very much there, LA. We're looking at that this coming week. In the meantime, I'm going to be working on a number of different books, not the least of which is Races of the World second edition. Okay, it's coming along nicely. Boondock's going, how often does the consortium intervene, or for a better term, save Mother Earth? In all fairness, not very often. Fortunately, Mother Earth, you know her as Mother Earth, maybe you know her as Gaia or Mother Nature. I know her as Itza. She's got a pretty solid defense mechanism on her part. But the consortium did back up the Strazazians getting here about 300 years ago to actually intervene against the Teklek, who were planning on coming in here to strip mine Earth of everything, including the people. But that was the last time they actually had to show up here in order to protect Itza. The fact of the matter is, because of the way. Good night, Mike. Thanks so much for joining us. Because of the way that the consortium is laid out, the member species know that going after a protected planet is a bad idea. Like I said, the consortium comes in and goes, okay, we're taking out your primary, secondary, and tertiary landfalls of your governments. This takes everybody and throws it back to chaos, back to the primordial soup. That said, we're down to the last 5 minutes here. Thanks so much, LA. With that in mind, I want to say thank you so very much for sharing your time with us tonight. Really appreciate it. We will be back again tomorrow. And of course, we come back at 4 o'clock with a day in the office. You're welcome to join us there. And then again at 8 o'clock tomorrow night for positive perceptions. Until then, do take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.